offer would be below at front?
Let me think.
Because that wouldn't make.
No, because as this comes out,
Yeah. Ah.
and here 10,
Yeah.
negative 10
Oh,
over
perfect.
here, negative something else over here.
So I'm just
Yeah,
flipping.
right, and that's so easy to
Yeah.
do, Charlie, so easy to do. So I think we have strike at 5/13 of a week, okay? So you might see that, or you might see something that was even mean, like this. Do you see one of these in your problem sets yet? Okay, and I think then that over here, it was also like this, such that when you equilibrate them, what happens? They cancel out. They cancel out. So I don't believe I show you, no, I don't believe I force you to motivate a quadratic, which I think is what you were a little concerned about. And if not, it's one of the things you maybe should have been concerned about, given the way those look. This is going to be pretty standard. 2 equations, 2 unknowns. Solve for that one, gives you this one. Pretty simple. Okay, Joel?
So earlier you drew the union and non-union sectors,
Mm-hmm.
and you mentioned that the non-union market wage was, yeah, it rose, but it was still below the union market wage.
Uh-huh.
Is the difference in the two a fair price for union membership, or is that anything?
Good question. I think that that's probably the most obvious reason that there would be that. But you might also have over time this issue of the union members may be perceived to be slightly higher skilled. The apprenticeship program leading to journeymen and some of the other credentials and qualifications that they may say that we have. So that might be it as well. So the union, if it ultimately does become slightly more highly skilled of workers than the other one, even though they started out the same, the more highly skilled would end up with a higher wage, even though we would commonly think of them as being similar workers. And there are some places in which the unions, where there are states in which you maybe have a union shop and a non-union shop really down the street from each other and bidding on the same kinds of contracts. Let's say there's an electrical company and they're bidding on residential construction. If I'm a union shop, I'm going to try to sell to the builder that my workers are going to be higher skilled workers. But I am paying them a little bit more, so I've got to find a way to justify it. Yeah.
Wasn't there something in New York City about this, where the government was building a bathroom, it was a public bathroom, and there was this outcry because this bathroom had cost $2 million, whereas a private donor had built another bathroom. It's like the most beautiful bathroom in New York City, and it cost $126,000. And they were going over it, but they never mentioned specifically that government hires unions, but they were complaining that the government wasn't spending money correctly. Is it because of the union that would cause something like construction of a bathroom to be so expensive?
You know, I don't know that you can necessarily lay that only at the feet of the union, okay? Although we do know in some of these large metropolitan areas, unions are strong enough and they are influential enough with councilmen and mayoral offices and such to exercise some undue influence there. But I think that's probably more a function of the inefficiency and sometimes corruptness or quasi-corruptness of some of these large polities. And is that expressly separate from unionization? No, but I don't know that the cause and effect is that direct. I don't know. The real answer is I don't know.
But you would think it would be impactful enough to make the price go from like $126,000 all the way to like $2 million.
Well, I know that Jimmy Hoffa became a millionaire many, many times over by not having hardly any salary at all. And I think the rest of that speaks for itself, right? Little stuff that goes under the table. Stuff that went under the table was unbelievable in those days. Today, I still think it's sickening to many of us, but it's less than it was. Listen.
Well, don't like big unions, a lot of them own part of the company, like General Motors, isn't that partially owned by a union?
Well, it is, but not because of this kind of thing, Charlie. It's partially owned by the government because of the reorganization. And the government having
As of late.
lent a tremendous amount of money. And we as taxpayers demanded it. But I think that even if unions aren't technically owners of some of these companies, they sometimes do exercise a lot of influence. Okay, so let's move off. Oh,
One
Ben?
last question.
Yeah.
So going back to the pre-labor and after, or
Yeah.
labor union and after labor union, if a labor quota is instated, will that labor quota ever exceed the demand curve?
Wow.
And will they
So-
continue that, or if that's not gonna be on the test, I won't worry about it.
No, I would not have on the exam, I don't think I place on the exam ever two different types of friction, each with their own compounding dynamic. I mean, if this were a doctoral course in labor, yeah, okay? But, because then we can go into partial derivatives and we can do regression analyses and see which one has which effect, but we're not doing that. Y'all wouldn't be all that amused. Okay, so let's transition and talk about inequality. How many of you have watched any of the videos I have posted already? Oh, good, very good, thank you. What did you think of the Robert Reich video?
Is that
Is
the
that the
capital?
news talk?
No, so that was Bill Moyer and Paul Krugman were talking about it, but the Robert Reich video is Inequality for All,
Where
and
it
it's
breaks
long,
down.
so you may not have seen it yet.
It's not the movie though, right?
It is the movie.
Oh,
It is the movie. It's like,
I was
What,
waiting
an hour
to
and a
watch
half?
that, yeah.
I think it's too bad he gave up and quit. But
what do you mean?
I think he had some great ideas, he just,
I don't think he's quit.
well, he quit, I'm sorry, the administration, the Clinton administration.
Yes, that was different, and this video came way after that. In fact, he's got a YouTube page that's got all kinds of stuff on it. He's got a website that's got all kinds of stuff on it. I have kind of this conflicting feeling about Reich. On one hand, he is an avowed liberal that is just far too left of center and sometimes not terribly rational in my way of thinking, but he makes some points that I think are excellent points.
He
Okay,
portrayed himself as a centrist.
I know that, but the vast majority of the voting population at the time thought that he was a hair's breadth shy of a communist. Okay,
I never did hear, what were his proposals to change that?
oh, there are many. In fact, he's got proposals on labor, he's got proposals on all types of inequality, he's got proposals on urbanization issues. I mean, the guy is bright, prolific, and by the way, about that tall.
So, my question was, the movie talked about the problem,
And he talked about some solutions.
but I didn't really see the solution.
His solution was at once obvious, and at the same time, you had to be able to think about it in perspective to get what he was saying. He said the solution to the modern labor crisis is for America to look back at itself. Look back at what we were in the 50s and early 60s. Look back at a time where we were willing to pay more to a worker so the worker could have a good standard of living. Think back to Henry Ford. This is way before the unions, okay? Think back to Henry Ford. And Henry Ford did something that was dynamic, and he created what we now think of as an efficiency wage. You should remember seeing that in the videos. We didn't really focus on it much. It's kind of an ancillary item as far as I'm concerned today. They created an efficiency wage. He paid a lot more at a point for his workers. In fact, it was a quantum leap virtually overnight for his workers so that they could have a higher quality of life and they could be treated more justly, or maybe because he was a brilliant capitalist. Yeah.
So was his company publicly owned at the time?
No.
That's probably why he was able to get away.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, you couldn't do that in Ford Motor Company today. Okay? It was privately held amongst he and close family members and some senior executives. Yeah. And even if there were some more shareholders, we didn't have the securities regulations then that we have today. Okay?
So that's the key then, isn't it?
That's part of the key.
Have your company not be public. and then you don't have to answer to shareholders.
Well, in fact, we're gonna come back to that in a second with respect to inequality, because there's something going on that I think might be interesting. But he went ahead and doubled the wage overnight, and, which we think, what do you mean double the wage overnight? He didn't increase the price of the car. He just absorbed the extra wage, so it decreased his profits? What else did he do?
Any programs where they could buy the cars and
Yeah.
service the loan?
This wasn't
Was it
just,
basically?
this wasn't just the conscious capitalist. This wasn't being a egalitarian, let's go sing Kumbaya guy. He figured out if I pay him more and offer him a car on time, on the timed payments, and link their ability to make those payments with their employment, I not only get longer serving employees, I sell more cars. Yeah, I'm paying those employees more money, but the amount I'm paying an employee versus the cost of my other input costs isn't that big a deal. He made more profit doing it. And his competitors couldn't believe it until finally after 6 months, a year, 2 years, they virtually all followed because it was brilliant. I mean, Henry Ford did the production line thing. I think that's interesting. Adam Smith would have been all over that. But Henry Ford's brilliance was in that. Let's pay them more and let's motivate them to buy our product, because there's so many of them that if we just sell our product to a small percentage or a reasonable percentage, we're going to increase our number of sales. We're going to become phenomenally wealthy, and he did. Yeah.
What happens when a worker who worked there agreed to buy a car on borrowed time? Was it on borrowed time?
Well, they borrowed the money and paid it over time,
Oh.
and it came directly out of their paychecks. And the initial contracts were such that if you quit or were terminated for cause, the car was repossessed.
Oh, that was my question. Okay.
Yeah,
So
right.
they lose the complete asset.
Yep, it was
Well,
completely
that's-
tied. It was completely tied, which meant that it was an alignment device. So here you are, Holly. Don't you love your new Ford Coupe? It's the color you wanted. It's black, okay? And you know that if you screw up on the job, not only do you lose your wage, but you can find a wage somewhere else. You lose your car. And this was beginning with America's love of the automobile. And I love cars. I'm a gearhead. I love cars. So anyway, private equity for a second, because you said maybe the key's not having public markets, public owned stock.
Well,
Well, you didn't say public markets, but not having your stock publicly traded, publicly held. Private equity. Do we see more and more influence of private equity within our burgeoning and developing firms? Absolutely. In fact, we see, and this is a little bit off the point, but only kind of, we see a tremendous influence from private equity and venture capital, but mostly private equity, on the IPO market. When was the last time you heard about one of these big Shazam whiz-bang companies going public? 20 years ago, if Uber had come along the scene, it'd be public by now, right? 20 years ago, Facebook would have been public much sooner. Snapchat, which I think is public. But some of these companies, Tesla took them a while to decide to go public. The private equity market has really gotten involved in this, so that we can make decisions without having to deal with the public regulatory scrutiny. That's part of it. That's part of it. That latitude gives us more ability to extract profit before we take the company to public.
So does that, sorry, just so I understand, does that mean that there are people who have a lot of money who want to invest in the company but aren't necessarily part of like Wall Street or anything like that?
They're part of Wall Street, if you will, the investment banking establishment, but it doesn't become publicly held, publicly traded. So Jim and Charlie and I, we each take our $5 billion, put it together. We got $15 billion. Now we can go ahead and, let's say it's $15 million. We can go ahead and leverage, and we can borrow another $90 million because of the $15 million in equity, and now we can buy Sam's $105 million company. And it's just ours, for us. I don't have to share it with you. Okay. And it sounds kind of silly, right? It's a really interesting phenomenon. Okay, so here's a couple of things that I thought is worth talking about before we start to look at the measurement issues, which are a little bit cumbersome, but only a little bit until you can visualize them. Okay. I think it's interesting that one of the little videos that talked about the wealth creation and wealth in America and income in America, and showed you these charts, and boy, it started out down here, and 300 million Americans, and then income and wealth per household. And it was going back and forth, wealth in the household, individuals in the households, total individuals, number of households, income, and the guy was mixing up his data points really badly. And that video, if you remember the one I'm talking about, it's one with just graphic images. It's not people, actors, and such, and it's not an interview. That video has, I think, a lot of power to it. But if you are following the person speaking, the person that put this together, it doesn't make any sense. And I think he could very easily make 2 videos if he wanted to, each of which were very accurate, very concise, very consistent internally, and preach that gospel with yet more power. But he would have to understand and agree to something. Is income inequality natural in a society of workers?
Yes,
Why?
because even when you have socialistic or communistic governments who control the income, who give people wages, you still have a hierarchy. And
Okay.
things that-
So pure communism, pure socialism, you'd have the functional hierarchy, but you wouldn't have disparity of wage amongst them. Have we ever seen that succeed?
Communism?
Pure communism, pure socialism?
No.
No. And what you just pointed out is the reason why. Because human nature is such that even if all of us, we are the whole economy, if we are all being paid the exact same dollar amount, Joel over here, if he realizes, look, I'm carrying a lot more of the burden. People are coming to me, I'm organizing this thing. Yeah, why should I be paid the same amount? Charlie, I'm here to tell you, you want that assignment? Then I really expect an envelope. You know, and so we see this, right? We see corruption develop in these societies. So there is that human nature issue. I think there's some merit to that. Why else might income inequality be a natural byproduct in a society of workers?